Welcome everybody to the Annenberg Space for Photography. My name is Vidi House, and I'm the Education and Public Programs lead here at ASP. Our newest exhibition, Contact High, Visual History of Hip Hop, is running through August 18th. So if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, please do come back and check it out before it closes. Tonight, I am here to welcome you all to an evening that takes us back to the early days of hip hop in SoCal, and with those who were there when it all went down. So here to lead the discussion is Jeff Chang. He is a journalist, an author that focuses on culture, politics, the arts, and music. His first book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of Hip Hop Generation, looks back on 30 years of this exciting culture and has received many honors, including the American Book Award and the Asian American Literary Award. His web series for PBS is called We Gon' Be Alright, and it's also the title of his book. And his next project is a biography of Bruce Lee, Little Brown. He now serves as the Vice President for Narrative Arts and Culture at Race Forward. And please join me in welcoming Jeff Chang.
Thank you, Vidi. How's everybody doing tonight? Yes, welcome to Contact High. Welcome to California Love, LA Hip Hop History. I want to send a huge shout out and a thank you to the Annenberg Space for Photography for hosting us this evening. And I want to send a big shout out to Vicky Toback in the house. Come on, Vicky, come on up. I'm not going to make you talk. Just wave them from back there. Vicky is the curator of this exhibition that you got to see. How many people got to see the exhibition actually so far? Most of you? If you haven't, please set aside some time to come back, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe a whole day to come back. I heard somebody earlier in the hall saying, I could just live here in this exhibition. This is just my life here. Vicky curated this exhibition. It is part of her best-selling book, Contact High, of Visual Hip Hop History, one of the most important books to come out on hip hop. And the amazing thing about Vicky is that she's doing events like this all around the country. So it's a way to be able to bring our communities together, lift us up, give us a voice, and everybody knows in a time like this, right, it's really important to be able to do that. So thank you very much, Vicky, for being able to make all of this happen for us. Give her a hand, please. We have an amazing evening ahead of us. We have some of the legends and pioneers of Los Angeles hip hop in the house with us. They got stories, folks. They got stories. And we'll get to hear all of that from the beginnings of LA rap through the 1980s and the rise of hip hop radio here in Los Angeles to the 1990s and the central role that Los Angeles plays in making hip hop a global thing. On and on and on. We got all kinds of stuff ahead of us. So I'm going to welcome to the stage now our three guests. First of all, he's the founder of the world-class Wrecking Crew and Crew Cut Records, where many of the most important figures in LA rap got their start. He is currently running a nonprofit called Lyrical Revolution, has a podcast, a YouTube podcast, and a show called GAME, and is in the hip-hop HBO doc United Skates. Please welcome the godfather of West Coast rap, Lonzo Williams. Welcome. Next, we have a radio personality now at 94.7 The Wave in Los Angeles. He's heard on over 20 other radio stations in 4 different countries via his syndicated show. He began the first ever all-rap radio station, 1580 KDAY. Incredibly influential. He's listed as one of the top 20 black DJs. I would say top 20 DJs, period, right, of all time. Please welcome Greg Mack. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. And she was the editor-in-chief of Rap Pages and XXL, the music editor of Vibe, and executive editor of 360 Hip Hop, VP of music content at BET Interactive. She was my boss for many years. She co-produced 1998's A Great Day in Hip Hop and currently manages Morris Media Studios in Leimert Park, the indie podcast hub founded by her longtime best friend, the respected radio veteran and former rap artist, Felicia the Poetess Morris. Where's the Poetess? Hey. Please welcome to the stage the legendary and pioneering hip-hop journalist and editor, Sheena Lester. Not at all, not at all. So here we are, California love. I know you all got stories. I want to just like spark this and let you all tell the stories and get out of the way. Let's start maybe here with Lonzo, because you were getting started. Everybody kind of knows the history of hip hop, right? That it gets started in New York City, in the Bronx in 1973. You were doing this with Disco Construction back in 1975, right?
Fresh out of high school. Yes, sir.
Fresh out of high school.
Fresh out of high school.
And then you moved it into the clubs with Eves After Dark and with Dudos. And then you got it onto record with Crew Cut Records and that kind of thing. I'm wondering if you can kind of maybe take us in an abbreviated fashion, right, in 5 minutes or less, through the roots of Los Angeles rap as you saw it.
All right,
how did LA rap get started?
We're going to condense 40 years into 5 minutes. When I first got into hip-hop, it wasn't called hip-hop. It was just partying. We were a bunch of young kids. It was right after the disco era, right during the disco era, and they had discos everywhere, but we couldn't go. We couldn't go in, and we decided to start giving dances. Also, and at that same time, a lot of the schools we went to gave dances to raise money. I went to a Catholic school, and one of the things we did after school sometimes was to give dances. And there were nuns with security guards. They'd hire a guy to play records. No DJ, just a guy to play records. And after a while, they started giving dances at the parks, Campanella Park, especially in Compton. Every park had a dance either Friday or Saturday, and that was the ultimate place to be on Friday and Saturday at one of these dances. Before KDAY, the station was called KGFJ. And we go to listen to various DJs, and that's why I fell in love with DJing. Because this guy was playing records, and I never saw a DJ play records and get the kind of personal response that he was getting. You know, he had people saying all kind of crazy stuff, and they would respond to it. Inspired me. I'm 15 years old. And if you didn't go to the dance on Saturday, you was a chump on Monday. So just keep stay non-chumpish, I would go as much as I could. Eventually, we started doing this. Those dances started getting cut out. Okay, whatever reason, economics, those things started getting cut out. And right around the disco era, we decided to start doing the same thing ourselves. We were 18 years old, in high school, old enough to sign a contract, go to the Queen Mary, Alpine Village, LA Convention Center, and rent a room. And put 300 to 500, sometimes on a good night, 1,000 people in that room. And boy, we made money, okay? And it was the hustle of the day, because we dare not sell dope. This is pre-crack. This is the hustle that we did. This was our business. This was our business model that we did, and we did this on a regular basis. And it was a crew of us. It was multiple crews that did this. And we were doing this before hip-hop. I'm playing, as a DJ, I'm playing everything from Rick James to Instant Funk to the Bee Gees, Mary Jane Girls, whatever was the flow. There was no hip-hop at that time. It wasn't until 1979 till we started seeing, or actually 1978, we first heard our first hip-hop record, and that was Curtis Blow's Christmas Rap. And then in 1979, we heard Rapper's Delight. And what happened in 1979 also, I opened my club, Eve After Dark. I was 22 years old, had no idea that I'd ever own a club at 22 years old. Just so happened, a series of events caused that to happen. I lived in my dad's old house. Him and my mom had divorced, and my mom had passed. And my dad made me live in the house. Well, he had keys. It was technically his house. I'm just occupying it. He walks in the house and sees me counting about $600. And he just knew I went to the dark side. I was trying to sell dope. And he wasn't having it. And he's about to tear into me like a bear into a honeycomb. And, time out. Hold on, man. Hold on. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm over here at Alpine Village every other week doing dances. And he put a time out on me. He came by, saw what I was doing, and realized that I was making money legitimately. First, he was happy. He was very happy. Then when he asked about the numbers, how much we paid for the room, blah, 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 he realized we were being taken advantage of to a certain degree because we didn't have any other choice. But he also had an alternative for me, and his friend had just opened a banquet hall over his club on Avalon El Segundo. The club was called Jeffy's. The banquet hall was called Eve After Dark. And these two dudes went into this room. I was there. I said very little. And they negotiated a deal for me to get this room every Friday and Saturday. I asked my partner at that time, Roger Clayton from Uncle Jam's Army, did he want a part of it? He said no. Too many sherm heads. Well, I knew all the sherm heads and the guy that sold the sherm heads, so there wasn't no problem for me. And I had a female partner also, a lady by the name of Jeannie. She was my business partner. This all is in my book. And she financed me to get through the first 6 months because it was tough. Because coming from Alpine Village to Avalon El Segundo, that's a far cry if you're not used to the east side. And because I'm from the east side, I was respected, but I had to convince my clientele it was safe. And after about 6 months, we finally made it happen. And what made it happen, I joined a record pool called the R&B Disco Truth. A buddy of mine owned this record pool. And a record pool, for those who don't know, people give DJs records. They give you DJs records, you pay a fee, and you get records. This guy's brother and brother-in-law was a major guy in the music industry named Gerald Busby. I didn't really know him. The guy called me up one day. He says, hey, man, my car's in the shop. You mind taking me to pick up some records for the record pool? I had a van. I said, no problem. Because every time we get together, we're going to spend about $200 or $300 on his expense account. So that's always a good run for me. Get down there, and while I'm in this building, right here in Century City, that's right here in Century City, they're talking about Cameo coming to California. And Gerald's like, he's really perplexed. He's like, hey, man, I got Cameo coming I got events for him on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but nothing for Wednesday. I need them to go to a club on Wednesday. And I'm sitting there going, I got a club. And Gerald said, what club you got? I said, Eve After Dark. What I didn't know is that Gerald Busby was from Compton. He went to Compton High School. His brother-in-law, who was my partner, Lewis, also was from Compton. Yeah, he got a club, man, right there on Jeff. You know Jeffy's? Oh, yeah. You want Cameo? That's like asking somebody, do you want Lil Wayne or Drake? Yeah, I'll take him. I left that office. That was a Tuesday. They was coming that Wednesday. I left that office, shot straight to KDAY before Greg got there, and I bought 10 10-second spots. They call live reads. And all they said was, tonight at Eve After Dark, Avalon El Segundo, Cameo live. Tonight at Eve After Dark, Cameo live. And when that commercial ran, it ran 10 times, and the Eve After Dark was off the chain from that point on. We was packed on a Wednesday night. I still had Friday and Saturday to make my money. I didn't know how to act. I was 22 years old, and I was balding. My head was about this big. You couldn't tell me much of anything. This is all before I met Dr. Dre, all before I made a record, all before I booked Curtis Blow, because I didn't get to Curtis Blow until a couple of years later. But that's how we started here on the West Coast.
That's a great story. I'm wondering if you could, yeah, please. I wonder if you could tell us who are these folks here in these pictures up here. And tell us a little bit about the story behind those pictures.
Well, you know what? This is the 80s. This is the 80s. World Class Wrecking Crew, we did not tour with rap groups at the very beginning. There were no rap groups. We were one of the first rap groups out of the West Coast that was hit major tours. So we're touring with Mary Jane Girls, Bar Caves, Morris Day in the Time, these kind of acts. And Ready for the World, we were Ready for the World, and Force MDs were kind of our counterparts. And we had to kind of look like them. We couldn't wear tennis shoes and hang our pants off our butts at that time. That style hadn't hit yet. So we had to go with the androgynous look. And that's Dr. Dre, the picture he hates more than anything I could think of. A picture, and he has a little rouge on, little eyeliner. That's DJ Yella. DJ Yella got the one glove on, the lace glove, eyeliner, and little lip gloss. Me and Clientele, we just did the eyeliner. We wasn't going with the whole shot, and that's me with a very fresh Jerry curl. So this picture for some reason haunts people. Act like I'm ashamed of this picture. Now I'm not. For me, I love this picture. I love it because it shows you where the real roots of West Coast hip hop. And before they were gangsters, they were some pretty boys standing next to me.
So now, Greg, you had come from Texas. You were a DJ in Texas on the air. You were so good that the other side tried to figure out how to get you out of town, and you came to L.A. They got you a job in L.A. at KDAY. I'm curious because I know your story intersects here, right, with the World Class Wrecking Crew, with Lonzo, with Dre, with Yella, and everybody. But tell me first how the sound of Los Angeles was different from what you were hearing in Houston.
Well, first of all, Alonzo is the godfather. You got to give it up to this man. So one more time for Lonzo. I swear to God, this guy will keep you laughing all day long. I love him. And so a lot of you listen to me on 94.7 The Wave, and you say, well, what does he know about hip-hop? Let me explain. Eric B. and Rakim said it best when they said, it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And so I enjoy working at The Wave. It is where I'm at. It's the music that I like. Previous to there, when I was, I guess I've been there about 5 or 6 years. Previous to that, for the 20 years before that, I was buying and selling radio stations on my own. So that's what I did for quite a while. But I wanted to go back to when I first figured out what was going on with this hip-hop thing, because I had just started in radio in San Antonio, Texas, a station called KTSA, which was a top 40 station. So we played Rapper's Delight, which was the first rap song to ever be played on the radio. Now, mind you, historians will show you that rap started many years before that, but that was the first radio song. I get caught up in the rap world because people think that, you know, I made music and stuff, in which I was signed to Motown and MCA Records, and I realized I need to stay in radio. But I got to tell you, and I did a song with Eazy-E called Radio. That was a pretty big hit. But I got to tell you guys that, you know, leaving out of San Antonio, I learned a lot. I went to Corpus Christi at another top 40 station. So I became real familiar because these stations played mostly rock and country and western. Now, if you've ever seen me dance, you know that I can't. But I can get on with a country song and I can rip it up, okay? I can't explain it. You know, my friends say I embarrass them. But I was working in Houston at a station called Magic 102, and yes, you're right, the competing station down there, because I was the #1 DJ in Houston at that time, the competing station actually recorded my show and sent it to my boss-to-be at KDAY in Los Angeles. And so he called me one day and said, hey, we want you to come to LA. And I had always, that was like my ultimate goal, was to get to Los Angeles. And so he offered me and our morning guy both to come out. The morning guy was like, oh no, you don't want to go to LA, they're going to chew you up, spit you out, blah, blah, blah. And he gave me every bad story possible. But I was like, I got to go for it. And mind you, it was like 2.5 times the money. It wasn't like rocket science, although I did figure out later that California taxes. When I got my first check, I was like, no, wait a minute. But I went for it. And so about 2 days after being at KDAY, because out of the 5 black stations at that time, you had KGFJ, KACE, KUTE, KJLH, and KDAY. KDAY was number 5. And so they told me that, you know, do you have any ideas as to, you know, how we can get it going? I says, well, you know, yeah. And I always say that, even though I didn't at that time. But when I first got here, I was living in the heart of South Central Los Angeles. And so I said, you know, give me a couple of days and let me just think about it. And my thinking about it was literally just opening the window, because everybody was bumping their speakers real loud. And all you heard was anything on Sugar Hill Records. You heard Curtis Blow. You heard Run DMC. This was all being, you know, played. It wasn't being played on the radio, per se, on a regular basis. You might hear it at nighttime. They did what we call day parting in radio, where you would hear it at nighttime. But I thought about it. I said, you know, no radio station is really doing this. And so anyway, I went back and I talked to them. And they says, well, rap, I don't know. But they allowed me to do it. Within 90 days, we were at number 2 out of 5. I mean, the ratings exploded. With it came the drama. All the politicians wanted to shut me down because, you know, that rap music, y'all need to take that rap music off. All of the record companies wanted to shut me down. You're playing, you know, this, you know, Wrecking Crew record, and we spent $100,000 on promoting Freddie Jackson, and you're not playing him. And at that time, not one major record store would carry rap music, none of them. So the mom and pops were coming up making big time money, and the swap meets, of course, the rodeo. And so everybody was just telling me I was crazy. And we were just having so much fun, we didn't care. We were having good ratings. KDAY, and I wanted to point this out, we didn't just play rap, we played R&B. I also created another type of thing on the radio. We started playing, back then it was called high energy music. It is now called freestyle. Freestyle is still selling out arenas. And, you know, we're, you know, it all started at KDAY. So, you know, we get caught up, or I get caught up as being called, you know, the guy that started the first rap radio station. But we just played the hits. I could go on and on, but I know we only got 5 minutes.
No, I wanted to actually ask how you got the Mixmasters started, because that actually creates a whole kind of whole other kind of scene for LA hip hop, and kind of advances LA hip hop a lot. And of course, Lonzo played a big role in that. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about
the Mixmasters. For those that don't know, were the best group of DJs, I would say, in the United States, probably the world, that I assembled. When I first got here, when I was trying to learn the streets, my sister had said, I need to take you to Uncle Jam's Army so you can see, you know, everybody. And I was like, what's in Uncle Jam's Army? I didn't know. I just gotten here. And so she took me there, and I couldn't believe it. It was like 10,000 kids in the LA Sports Arena dancing to a group of DJs. And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to tie them in with KDAY, and we're going to be off, you know. I just wanted to rule the streets. I felt like if we were going to play that music, I had to rule the streets. And so I met Roger Clayton, who at the time was at least the face of Uncle Jam's Army. And I said, Roger, you know, let us tie in. You know, I'm Greg Mack. I'm new in town. Da 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 da. We can help you with the radio station. And so Roger looks at the crowd and he starts laughing. He says, does it look like I need effing radio? And I says, okay, well, all right. He started laughing, like, get the F out of here. And so me, I'm the kind of person that I never see roadblocks. I only see hurdles. And so every Monday we would have music meetings, and lo and behold, that's when we meet with all the record labels and discuss all their new songs. And that's when I met Lonzo. And so I said, Lonzo, you know, I told him what happened. I said, man, I'm going to start my own thing anyway. And I got this idea for this thing. And mind you, this is the first time there was ever a traffic jam. Now everybody has one. But I called it the traffic jam. I said, but I got to find me a couple of DJs. And Lonzo says, well, you can use my DJs. Oh, okay. Are they any good? And so he brings them by the station, and of course it's Dr. Dre and DJ Yella. And I says, oh, okay. Now, mind you, Dre didn't just do regular mixes. He did productions. He would actually take a 20-minute mix, and he would lay down a 20-minute beat, and then he would multi-track different songs up over that beat. It wasn't your regular mixing. And it became so big that he was starting to press them and sell them at the Rhodium swap meet.
No, I pressed them and sold them at the Rhodium swap meet.
Now,
that's what I did. See, Greg left a couple of parts out.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
And so Dre and Yella got so busy that I had to get some other DJs. They were not Mixmasters, Dre and Yella. But my first Mixmaster was brought to me by a rapper named Kid Frost, who I was a friend with. And Kid Frost brought me a gentleman named Tony G.
Yeah.
Tony G was a DJ that could do everything. He could battle, he could mix, all ages. And I also brought in a guy named Jammin' Gemini, who I had found, who was good with the adults. And then I brought in DJ Joe Cooley, who was a battler. Anybody, he could battle. And so those were the original Mixmasters in a nutshell. And yeah, everybody's history is different. So what you trying to say?
Well, it all depends on where you're sitting in the concert, your perspective of the show. Now, Greg didn't tell you how we met originally. I have one of my good friends, Rochelle Lucas, is a salesperson at KDAY, and she hooks me and Greg. But I just shut the Eve After Dark down. After about 6 years, I shut it down, and we had to move to Dudo's around the corner. Dudo's is 4 times bigger than Eve After Dark. Eve After Dark holds about 300 people. Dudo's held 2,000. So I had no idea how I'm going to put people in Dudo's. Me and Greg just come to town. He didn't tell you he had on his cowboy boots, his cowboy hat, driving a big yellow Eldorado.
No,
okay?
I wasn't driving Eldorado. It was black pickup. Thank you.
No, it was Eldorado. I remember an Eldorado, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm hanging out with Yosemite Sam up in here. We go to Dudo's, and now this is the beautiful part about our relationship. When I gave Greg, Dr. Dre, and DJ Yella, Greg gave me advertising for doing the mix, which made Dudo's a phenomenon at that time, okay? Because what would happen is before and after this 15-minute mix, in exchange for the mix, Greg would give us a commercial. Friday, the traffic jam brought to you by the world-class wrecking crew of Dudo's Music Center, 135th and Central, every Friday night. And that's all they said before and after. And every Friday, Dudo's was packed. Plus, Greg would give us a celebrity like Midnight Star or New Edition or something like that to keep it cracking. So that's something he forgot about. I just put that in just a little something he may have forgot about.
Sheena, I know you were probably at home just listening to this. I'm just wondering what it sounded like to a young person to be able to hear all of this stuff jumping off. Could you go? You couldn't even go to Dudo's, I guess, at this age, right?
I couldn't because I was growing up in San Bernardino.
Oh yeah, that's. Oh, what you weren't born yet? Oh. Oh, okay, that's right. But you couldn't get KDAY out there?
No, not
Oh,
then.
Okay.
Ours was the first black family to integrate the north end of San Bernardino.
Ooh.
And my dad was a Marine at the time.
Who's in the house? Hello, Mr. Lester.
Hello. He and his friend, a fantastic white man by the name of Walt Johnson, went walking around for 2 blocks in every direction to introduce themselves and tell people who he was, and he had a family, and blah, 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 and basically he wasn't tolerating any racist foolishness with his kids. So, less than a year later, we had a cross burned in our front yard. Wow. And the perpetrators were the older brothers of, one of my friends. So, yeah. Anyway, North End San Bernardino. But meanwhile, we were listening to the radio on the weekends, and in different pockets of San Bernardino at the time, you could get KDAY. Fortunately, my dad had a fantastic record collection. So when we did hear Rapper's Delight on the radio, 3 days later, Tim Lester had a 12-inch. So, and by then, of course, I don't know how many of you had parents with record collections, that you would listen to on the weekends, liner notes you would dive into. So that's sort of what I came up in. My love of hip hop came from my love of the records that my parents collected. I mean, I have distinct records of dancing to Quincy Jones, Stuff Like That album, and kicking my leg up like I was on a Fame dancer and landing directly on my back. You know? And that's what it was like coming up, and when you were in love with the music, You're young, you know what you like, you know what you feel, you know how it makes you move, and you want more of it, And that's what it was for us. So I just got lucky, basically. I started working at a black newspaper out of high school, the LA Sentinel. And that basically was my college, And from there, I was working in circulation and got asked to stay late one night to help, edit pages, and then was asked to move back into the newsroom. So from there, I, was a writer and did my thing there, and then they gave me a section called Young Ideas, which was the youth section.
Right.
And I developed a squad of writers from the high schools, and we would go out and cover various things. We covered some stuff with KDAY, I had them review records, interview artists, and that section in the paper sort of became our little hip-hop section. And then from there, I started doing the same thing for, different publications. And you guys remember a nightclub called Paradise 24? Don't front. Okay, I was going to say, thank you. Hello. So Paradise 24 actually started publishing a magazine. And so I started writing articles for Paradise 24 magazine. Met a gentleman by the name of Daryl James, who was about to start editing a rap magazine that was out of newsprint called Rap Sheet. You guys remember Rap Sheet, right? So I met with him, and he introduced me to a gentleman by the name of James Sims, who was Larry Flint's bodyguard. James had stepped to Daryl about, doing this magazine for Larry called Rap Pages. That was his idea. But, Daryl had already signed his fat deal over at Rap Sheet, so he introduced me to me. So I met with James, and he introduced me to Larry, and we made it go. Before me, there was a gentleman by the name of N.W.A, who was the original editor of Rap Pages. And Dane went on to do other things, and they picked me up. And that was just fantastic. Because, Larry Flint Publications, you all know Larry Flint for being the magnificent pornographer that he was. But he also distributed tons of magazines, not just magazines that he created, but magazines that other people created that he was just wise enough to distribute. So when it came time to hire me for Rap Sheet, when I met with him, and I met with him maybe an issue and a half, maybe 2 issues into my job as editor-in-chief. James had hired me, that was good enough for Larry. And when Larry met with me, we had already taken Rap Pages down the stance of advocacy journalism. That's what I came from at the Sentinel. Ultimately, if you're a young, urban person, or you're interested in hip-hop, you have a certain sort of mentality and mindset already anyway. We're assuming you have a certain sense of sort of the value of diversity. A good rhyme, a dope beat. You know what I mean? We're not talking rocket science, but we're talking good, solid hip-hop. So when I met with Larry, his whole thing was like, yeah, white racism is stupid. White people who are racist are devils. He was on board with everything we were doing because he knew that we were working towards progress. And he knew that ultimately we were in love with our reader audience. The artists, of course, they're fantastic. Of course they look great. Of course they sound great. We were in love with our readers. Everybody who wrote to Rap Pages, we put on the comp list. If you were in jail and you wrote to us from Rap Pages, we put you on the comp list. Which meant that we got even more letters from them. You know what I mean? But it was great. Because one of those letters, I remember one letter we got from a gentleman, he was like, yeah, just having it rough, whatever. The whole sob story. We put him on the comp list, bang. So he wrote us back, and he's like, wow, you know what, now I feel bad because I was kind of lying. Now I feel bad. Like, wow. So we wrote back to him. It was like, yeah, okay, cool. We're not going to take you up the comp list. Use this magazine and go teach somebody to read. Go make a friend. You know, go give it to somebody who, you know, who might need it. Whatever. You know, use it to make your life better and to feel better about the lie you told us. You know, so that was the kind of thing that we did.
This is kind of the beautiful thing of what I'm hearing from the three of you is you're all telling a story about how you developed these communities. These, I mean, you know, marketers are looking at it as audiences, but people were talking to each other on KDAY. People were talking, people coming to the club on the weekend, and people are writing in and devouring the stuff that you're putting out in rap pages and in the magazines and that kind of thing. And all of that feels like it was really necessary in order for hip hop to really blow up the way that it did in the mid 90s with Death Row and that kind of thing. Would you say that's true? Would you? Oh,
Definitely.
Okay.
I thought you were talking to Greg. No, definitely. Without the foundation that we did, I tell people all the time that what Greg and I had going will never be duplicated again. It would take millions of dollars to do what Greg and I had the relationship we had developed. Not only did he promote us and do those and as DJs, but when we would leave the studio with a cassette, before I could get on the 110 freeway, Greg is playing it already. We haven't made the labels yet because I was an independent label. I had to make my own labels, get the acetates made, the whole 9 yards. And before I could get the records manufactured, Greg it's already a demand for them in the stores. Who has that? So it was such a dynamic situation and a dynamic time because Wrecking Crew, KDAY, we were like a trifecta. We had the streets, we had the radio, we had the clubs, we had the schools, and if anybody knows our record Juice, we purposely put all the schools in our area in that record. Centennial has JUICE, Locke has JUICE, so that gave us a direct connect to the streets that nobody thinks about anymore. And KDAY let us take that same message and just spread it all over the city. And then we gave them places to come on the weekend. It was killer.
Yeah. We kind of take it for granted now. So you going to add something here?
I just wanted to mention the one thing that we have, that I think that, you know, every particular publication has. Everybody has a sort of unique staff, the people you bring in to create the publication you want. You know, our staff was comprised of just folks who really were in love with the music and the culture. You know, you see any rap pages related piece you see in this fantastic exhibit was shot by a gentleman by the name of Brian Cross, B+, gentleman from Ireland, who is so ridiculously awesome. I mean, to the bone. Gabriel Alvarez was somebody who we stole from a magazine who was treating him horribly. And we didn't mean to steal him, you know, but we were happy to snatch him up. Randolph Hurd was one of the first editors who was there when I arrived. He's now, you know, like a story editor in the Transformers universe and has been for years. Bilal Polson, aka Bilal Allah, he was even back then, I'm going to be a school teacher, and now he is teaching kids and making them, just filling their hearts. We just had a staff that really loved its audience and really wanted to make sure that they were filled with the kind, that they knew how appreciated they were in hip-hop. We knew what they were appreciating, and we appreciated them for it. You know, Dorothy Stefanski, Brent Rollins, our art director. I mean, just some amazing, amazing folk. So I just want to make sure that they got their due.
I wanted to ask, you know, everybody probably in here has seen Straight Outta Compton, and there's that sort of particular history of LA hip hop, and so what you all are giving here tonight is a much different type of view, but it's also intersecting, right? And so what I wanted to ask is sort of the question of how did hip hop change from the beginning of the 80s to the beginning of the 1990s? How did you see it changing on the radio in terms of the stuff that you were doing in the clubs? You're writing at the Sentinel, and you're seeing things change. How did it change, and how would you describe it now, looking back on it?
Okay, you know, Straight Outta Compton, first of all, I mean, I had talked to them when they were writing the movie a few years before I guess they got to the shooting it. So I didn't even know what was going to happen. Matter of fact, I didn't even know that I was in the movie till about 2 weeks before it debuted. And they called me because they needed me to sign off at the very end. When the credits are rolling, because when I tell people I was actually in there, they're like, I didn't see you in there. That's because the credits were rolling. But I had to sign off for that part. And they says, well, if you don't want to sign off on it, we won't use it. And I said, no, we put it in there. And I did not know that F. Gary Gray was playing me in the movie and stuff like that. But I can tell you this, in reference to your question, it changed a lot, and it's continuing to change. It was interesting because when I first started playing rap regularly on the radio, and mind you, there were people that were playing it in New York, Mr. Magic and Red Alert, who were good friends of mine, but they were playing it like in mix shows at night, and then you had my friend Nasty Ness doing it up in Seattle. So I just wanted to give them their props. But we had, hip-hop music originally was a fun thing. We were having fun. People were rapping about, go see the doctor, or friends, or Rapper's Delight. It was a friendly, maybe sexual sometimes. It started to evolve as far as the radio side. I can't speak for the music and the magazine side, but from the radio side, for us, it started changing more toward the late 80s to where it got a little more educational about what was going on in the streets. And then the reason that, when F the Police came out and all of that stuff, people were, it raised quite a stink, and Ice-T's 6 in the morning. And they were like, hey, because we played 6 in the morning. My boss almost fired me, but we played 6 in the morning. We couldn't play F the Police, but, we got a lot of backlash on even supporting these guys. And they were like, don't you understand? And I'm like, well, what they're talking about, I've actually experienced. And so what do you want me to do? I can't say that they're lying, but it started to change then. It has gone on, I will say up until today, I've forced myself to listen to the new hip hop that's out. And I'm not saying that joke, I'm serious, because I feel like I want to understand, because even back then, when our parents were saying, oh, turn that off, if they would have just taken the time to listen. So I really try and listen, and I like Cardi B, I like Drake, even though they're talking about some stupid stuff, and it's kind of interesting that you really, you like, there's a string of strippers that are, going on and doing big things. And here's how I keep it in perspective, because
I'm waiting my turn.
No, wait a minute.
I'm waiting my turn. I'm just waiting.
This is how I keep it in perspective, because back then there was a whole bunch of drug dealers that were making records, and so you have to keep it in perspective. And so even though I don't understand it, I'm really trying. And my friend who's sitting down here on the front row, every time we're rolling somewhere, she's blasting, Nipsey and all of this stuff. I'm like, really? Okay. So I am learning to appreciate it, but it's evolving. Rap is constantly evolving. I think that it will get back to where people can dance to it. I really do.
All right.
So, Lonzo, do you have any opinions about this particular
Do
topic?
I?
Oh, I just wanted to ask.
First of all, being from the roots of West Coast hip-hop, the one thing about hip-hop, East Coast and West Coast, it was always based on keeping it 100, keeping it real, 100. At some point in time, it went to 50%. Okay? Because the picture gone now. When half of my crew became gangsters, it went to 50%. One thing about hip-hop customers, hip-hop fans, especially the young ones, they never take time to vet their artists. They take their artists based on their lyrical value. They assume what you say is who you are. I'm doing a podcast Monday, and it talks about how nowadays lyrics are being used against artists in court. So as a rapper in the studio, you're a terrorist. You just shy of ISIS. oh, I kill this, I shoot this, I do this. But when you get to court, I am not that guy. I swear to God, I'm not that guy. I've seen it happen too many times. But what happens in the meantime is these kids who are vulnerable believe what you're saying. Now, I'm a grown man, but when I was a kid, back in the 70s, I wanted to be a Black Panther. I couldn't wait to be a Black Panther because the Black Panther was the coolest thing you could be at that time. And I wanted a natural, but I was a Catholic school kid. I couldn't wear a natural to Catholic school. You can't take a fork to that Catholic school. You can't do that. So what I would do on the weekends, I would blow my hair out. Now, all this time, I wanted to be a Black Panther till about 73. And because what happened is at that time, we had a lot of the Black Panther, the music was all pro-black. Sly the Family Stone, Curtis Mayfield was the man at that time. He had all those songs that was uplifting to black people. People get ready, there's a train to come and keep your head up, all that kind of stuff. And when Curtis Mayfield did Superfly, I went from wanting to be a Black Panther to wanting to be a pimp. I'm the first generation of the experiment. I am a victim of the experiment. Why do you think I wear this shirt? I wanted to be a pimp. I had a natural. I went and got my hair pressed and curled. I got it pressed. I got my ears burnt. Went to school with tape on my ears like a Doberman pincher. I'm telling you the truth because when I heard the music, Superfly, I saw the album cover. The guy got this long hair. I had a natural about this big. I got it pressed and set on my shoulders. I was cool. I cut a guy's line who sold clothes out of his car. This is the honest to God truth. I'm telling you what I did, how music affected me. So I cut this guy's line like 10 times to buy my first maxi coat. I got pictures of me wearing this coat with my hair down to my shoulders at 17 years old. My mom thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was going gay. But because I saw it, and here's the crazy part. I did not see the movie. All I saw was the album cover and heard the album. I went from being a militant to Superfly Junior. Okay, so when I see this, and I got a couple of album covers with me sitting on the front of on a Cadillac looking like a pimp, I'm telling you what the music does. Music is one of the most infectious things known to man. Because unlike a movie, you may see a movie one time, but a song, you can't get away from it. If you remember that song Happy Pharrell had, you could not get away from Happy for nothing in the world. No matter what station you turned to, Happy was on. And it's the same thing with Cardi B right now. And I can't stand Cardi B. Not because she's a bad artist, but understand this. And this is the problem I think people don't understand with the backstory on hip-hop. What happened in the 80s, so many artists came up from the dope era, it became a route to success. Most of those guys don't make it that far. Everybody don't become a dope dealer and to a superstar, a Eazy-E, a Jay-Z. Everybody don't do that. A lot of guys are still doing time trying to get their first demo tape made. And I tell people all the time, me and some ladies have some serious arguments about Cardi B. And I says, okay, yeah, she got the bag now. She's doing fantastic. Now, what part of her career coming up would you recommend for your daughter? The stripper pole part, the prostitution part, or the part where she was butt naked on YouTube? Because I used to run a strip club. Yes, I did. So I've done it all, folks. I want to be a pimp. You got to run a strip club. When you see people, when you see young ladies or people trying to acquire something, they think that this is the road to success. And all of a sudden, either they get caught up in it through drugs, they get caught up in a case a mama can't get them out of, and they're done. They're looking at a basketball score for time, trying to be something that somebody told them they need to be. Now you understand that this right here is a whole other problem. It's not just about what they achieve, it's how they achieve it. And that, being that I'm a dad and a granddad, I see a lot of problems with that. And that's the problem I see right now. You got so many guys doing commercials for pharmaceutical drugs. Okay, you got guys, for a while they was telling you they were selling drugs, and shooting at each other. Now they're shooting at each other high on the drugs from pharmaceuticals. The only thing that's happened is that if there's change, it just changed the suppliers. Now they're getting them from from Big Pharma as opposed to Columbia. Columbia still do okay, don't get me wrong. But for the most part, they're doing it for Big Pharma. Everybody's pumping mollies or whatever the case may be. And these are a lot easier to get than the other stuff. Don't get me started, please.
Yeah.
I want to talk, somebody else talk.
Amen, Lonzo. Amen.
Sheena, I want so there's 4 different covers up here from Rap Pages from 92, 93 through 95, right? Remembering Easy E. And one thing that strikes me is the just huge diversity of different kinds of folks that you have represented on these covers. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the 90s, where you start hearing all of these different types of voices coming out, right, in hip-hop. You got Medusa, right? You got Lady of Rage. You got Razkaz up there. You got Snoop. You got Easy. You got AC alone, right? So there's a whole bunch of different folks that are kind of represented. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that period meant in terms of hip-hop blowing up and what you were trying to represent in Rap Pages and presenting all these different types of voices.
Well, I can tell you that the one thing that we wanted to do was to just show the diversity of the voices, Obviously, these folks are from, various styles, of hip-hop. And the one thing that you can certainly say about hip-hop in the 90s was that there was a clear differentiation between fame and infamy that no longer exists. And the idea that you were famous for your skill versus being infamous for whatever. And one kind of had nothing to do with the other. And if you were trying to use one or the other, you were kind of playing yourself. You know what I mean? Those rules don't exist anymore because the rules have changed. We were talking about that in the back room. I feel like back in the days, I'm 99 years old. I feel like in hip hop there used to be certain rules, just sort of certain kind of rules from the door. And the only real one was no biting, right? I don't think that's a rule anymore. Is that still a rule? That's not a rule. So when we talk about the way that hip hop's changed over the years, we kind of have to ask ourselves who's responsible. We learn at our parents' needs. I learned my music from what my folks bought. The conversations we had about music. If we have an issue with the way that hip hop is being treated today, the way that rappers are rapping today, what they're talking about thematically, etc., etc. If there are values that they didn't learn, we have to ask ourselves if we're more responsible for that than they are on a certain level. At least it's a conversation we have to have. What we did or did not teach the next generation about hip hop. When we were doing it or when we were covering it, it was described as urban youth culture. So that was back in the 90s. So it was urban youth culture then. Is it still urban youth culture? Is it something else? Is it world youth culture? Those kids are now grown back then. You know what I mean? We have to at least have those conversations and be willing to have, the hard conversations about what roles we played, didn't play, or need to play now to make sure that the culture we love is what we want it to be. And those are always things that we kind of thought about at Rap Pages too, I will say that. This was Snoop's first cover, and it was shot by a gentleman named Sheena, who has got the shots from that shoot on display right now in Sweden. A lot of these shots from back in the day are really sort of being appreciated now. So that's out. The LA Underground issue, the sister there, Medusa, she's actually, I think she just put out an album last night, or this week she just put out a new album. She's been underground since then. She's considered, the gangsta goddess? She's the
queen of the underground.
She's the queen of the underground. Proudly. Probably still wearing that outfit, by the way. But Medusa is beyond belief. She's just rolling hard. And God bless the dead, Ganja K, who's standing behind her. He's no longer with us. But he was a fantastic guy. This particular issue, what we did was we sent everybody out we had a writer with each of those artists, and we all spent a day with them the same day, and we just weave that story together. This really is a day in the life of the LA Underground from all of those folks' days.
And that's happening at exactly the same time that Snoop and Dre and them are at their peak.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also, again, it's part of, it just underscores how diverse the scene was.
Mm-hmm.
You could have gangsters talking about one thing. You could have conscious folk talking about another. You know, you can have, you know, members of the LGBT community getting their thing on in hip hop, rapping, you know, meanwhile you have other folks making punk stuff up to get me down. You know, at the end of the day, it all feeds the same culture, you know, it feeds just voices, people having their say, you know. And it was a great time. That is actually the first time Brett Rollins is the first person I've ever heard use the expression Generation Next. That's the first time you saw it in print back in those days. And then Lady of Rage, the wonderful Robin Allen, who is just, again, a phenomenal artist, was back then, and actually her real passion is acting. But she's fantastic on that night. She's still making records and still out doing shows. She actually was headlined on the Tom Joyner Fantastic Voyage cruise. If any of you guys are ever wise enough to book that cruise, please do. It's so fun. But she was on it and pleased her fans to death and was wise enough to have the poetess as her side woman, so she knows what she's doing. And of course, Eazy-E. That's actually our second Eazy-E cover. Because the first one we did was based on an interview that I did with Eazy, where he really sort of unwrapped all that stuff with N.W.A. and made some apologies and sort of told the story about how their friendships fell apart behind the scenes and was really vulnerable for the first time. And it really, that particular article made people widen their mind and their ideas around Eazy-E. So that was a particularly resonant one for us. But that issue we did, obviously, when he passed. And it was something else. There's a little shot of him wearing the plaid shirt. You can't see it, but Eazy-E has got a pile of weed on that thing. He basically was rolling joints for a party that we had, and we were, you know, we covered that up. But yeah, we just sort of pulled people's things together to make a cover for him that, you know, really reflected our love for him. Those candles were like from Jive Records, one of their promo items. You know, we just basically pulled together what we could in a short amount of time to present something that, you know, showed how much we loved him. And he was a phenomenal guy.
We've covered a lot of ground here from the beginnings of the beginning to Eazy-E's passing. I just wanted to open this up in a second to the audience, but before we do that, since we have you here, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the background around this wall over here called A Great Day in Hip Hop, because you were behind this, and if you can kind of walk us a little bit through this, and then we'll kick this over to the audience to ask questions of y'all.
Did you guys see this outside? You like it? Yeah. Yay. That was actually a concept that was at XXL when I arrived. I wrote a story about this last year for the 20th anniversary of Great Day in Hip Hop. Google it when you go home. It's called The Game Changer by Sheena Lester. I'll give you all the sweet details. But one of them in particular is that while we were doing A Great Day in Hip Hop, where we were planning it, a rival magazine editor threatened record companies and told them that any of their artists who showed up for Great Day in Hip Hop would be banned from their publication. Needless to say, folks showed up anyway. Because who's not going to show up for Gordon Parks' photo shoot? And also, who threatens folks from, how do you threaten somebody from posing for Gordon Parks? You know? So that story's online, look for it, it's good. That cover, we had a couple of errors. The roots are listed twice, as everyone loves to point out. Why'd you have the roots on there twice? Okay, look, we were on deadline. What do you want? Okay. The back of that issue, or in the issue, we had a key sort of mapping out who's there and who's standing there. Thank God, Vicky and the Contact High people made a new key that's over in the section with Great Day in Hip Hop where all the words are properly spelled. Again, we were on deadline. And actually, if I can show you, the Great Day in Hip Hop poster that the Gordon Parks Foundation gave out that poster this past June. And on it, on the back of it, can I see one of those things? On the back of it, they put the key. And it's the wrong key, right? But on the front, at least it has the date, you know, of the Gordon Parks Foundation. And this is actually I think it's a better poster than the one that we gave away for XXL because there's no, you know, it's just the straight photo. Anyway, you all are getting this when you leave. Now again,
You can thank Sheena for that.
the correct key is off in the exhibit, but you can take the one on the back and, you know, do whatever you need to do to, you know, correct it for your folk. Now here's the thing, one of the reasons why I wanted to arrange you guys to get it is because, A, thank you for selling out this fantastic night. That's just the best thing.
Yes.
But also, you know, this photo, we sold it in XXL. And the Gordon Parks folk were wise enough and sweet enough to give it away at the Gordon Parks Foundation last month. This is the first time the picture's really sort of being available here in Los Angeles. And because it's LA, I know y'all got game.
eBay.
And I know some of you are gonna finagle your way into more than one poster when you leave. Now, all good, do you, no judgment. But I want you to make sure that if you get out of here with more than one poster, that you are at least wise enough to get a summer of free haircuts out of it. You know, give it to a barber shop, something to where you can make sure that there are intergenerational conversations about hip hop being done, you know, going on as a result of this poster. At least do that. eBay, all right. But I'm saying, if you're not going to have those conversations in your own home, at least have enough game to make sure that you get a little something out of it, but that other folks are able to come up off the conversation.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
do that.
Hey Jeff,
I just wanna add two things. Oh,
I want to say something right
Oh,
quick.
sure, sure.
When you think about hip hop, the change of hip hop, think about two movies. House Party 1. Okay, everybody was in cross colors, ties, baggy pants. They was dancing. They had three gangsters.
Los Angeles.
Yeah, three
Southern
gangsters.
Brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, three gangsters. Then you think about Boys in the Hood. There was all gangsters and one good guy. Okay, things changed. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say two things. One is that the West Coast and especially Los Angeles is represented in this photo. In large part because Sheena involved. So despite the fact that it's in Harlem, there's LA folks and Bay Area folks in here, West Coast folks in here. It happened it happened 18 months after Biggie was shot here in Los Angeles, right? And so to see like this East Coast, West Coast, everybody in between, crucial conflict is in there, right? From Chicago. All kinds of folks up in this is a really powerful statement of that particular moment. And you're talking about intergenerational, discussions. This is 20 years ago, so this is our generation that's represented up here. But one thing I wanted to say is that Arnold Turner attempted to do a photo like this here in Los Angeles of the West Coast folks. Now, I want you to know, right above the greatest day over there is DJ Kool Herc. And right next to him is his MC partner, Coke LaRock. When they did A Day in the West here, Lonzo and Roger Clayton were in the house, were in the shoot. And they were in the back and they were hanging out and that kind of thing. And suddenly it stopped. Somebody said, hey, where's Lonzo and Roger? We got to bring them down here because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't all be here. And so Lonzo and Roger got to be in the front row of that particular photo as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we told that story too, in order to make sure that we understand. Yes.
I'm glad that Jeff mentioned that, not just as a way to give Lonzo props, and he will always be due, but also as a way to remind all of you who, or any of you who are consumers of hip-hop media, that, again, this day that he mentioned, A Day in the West, happened 20 years ago, and you haven't seen it yet. And my best friend, the poetess, was one of the folks who helped create that day, and no one's rang her phone to ask her about it. The picture's never been seen because Arnold Turner, the fantastic photographer who took the picture, was promising people, artists who didn't show up, that they would superimpose them into the picture. 20 years later, that picture still hasn't seen the street. So that means that somebody out there, you know, if I'm at a magazine, that's a picture I want to get out. That's a conversation I want to hear about. I want to talk to the folks who planned that day, all of that. Them girls had not gotten a single phone call. And no one's seen that picture. So, you know, y'all go to websites, y'all enjoy various medias, hit up these editors, find out where that story is. You know, it's out there, you know, so someone just needs to get it. And that goes to show that there's a real lack of passionate, you know, hip-hop media out there doing its work to make sure the next generation has a real sense of what they should. So, that's one of y'all, get it done.
Yes.
I want to see that picture, so make it happen.
Yes. And when you go home and listen to Cardi B on Dr. Dre's Apple radio show and that kind of thing, this is the reason why. Greg Mack. I want to open this. Yes, please, please. Hip Hop Radio, right here. We have a big old thing here. It looks like a Jack in the Box
cube
thing, but it's actually a microphone. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. We have about 10 minutes for that.
Yes, so this is our Q&A portion of the evening. I see a couple of hands here, so this is what we're going to use. Carla over here to my left will come to you, okay?
Oh, well, let's start here in the front.
Oh, this is the mic.
Talking to that.
Okay. Thank you. This question is for Alonzo. When you talked about back in the day when you ran those clubs and you were young and the money was coming in, and I guess I wanted you to elaborate on what was that like back then to be so young and successful, and I guess what are some of the things you would have, the mistakes you made when you had those clubs, I'm assuming you would have like done differently.
You know, before I opened Eve After Dark, the last job I had, I made $162 a week full time. I started DJing shortly after that, and I was making $500 a week, and I'm like, do I want a job? And because I would take my record, I worked at a record distributor. That's how I became the GodFather. I knew all the record stores. And because I would take my money, pull all records from the warehouse, and I'd get $16, $20 sometime and go home. They couldn't figure out what was happening. And when I would do this, and I'd make my money in the weekend, that was cool, because I went from making $160 a week to $500 a week on my own. And the first 6 months of Eve After Dark was tough, was real tough. And when Cameo hit, and I looked up one day and I had more money I'd ever seen in my life. In fact, my dad and I fell out because I had a job working for Caltrans. My dad was a Caltrans guy. He was Mr. CT. Had a job for me the whole 9 yards. I was going to quit. I was going to work for Caltrans, and we fell out because I chose DJing over Caltrans. I had a job the whole 9 yards. Again, that's in my book. And my old man didn't speak to me, although he got me the club at Eve After Dark. I mean, he fell out with me, but he still supported me. He hooked me up with Eve After Dark, looked over my shoulder, and tried to get me to go to work for Caltrans on Monday. I can't go to work on Monday after partying Friday and Saturday. Didn't want to go to work anyway. And when I started making money, he didn't know how much money I was making. He had no idea. And he had bought a new house, but he had a balloon payment and needed $2,500 to pay the balloon payment. He was stressing. He's sitting there with a bottle of E&J and a bottle of Coke, stressing. I said, "What's wrong, Pops?" He said, "Oh man, I got to give these folks $2,500 on Tuesday. And I don't have it all. How much you need?" $2,000. I went home, hit my little safe, and brought in the money in the shoebox. He wasn't mad at me no more. So I'm #1 son again, okay? So to go from struggling to be able to give your dad, and I see how, just, it was only $2,000, but for me it might have been $2 million. So to be able to give my dad something, that's all he gave me, although we had fell out, and to see us back on point again, that was probably one of the best feelings for me. And then after that, still have a nice safe full of money. My biggest problem was I lived in the hood, and everybody knew I made money. They broke into my house like they had keys. But they never found my money. They always stole my Sparkless water bottle. I would get change from the kids, and I had a Sparkless water bottle full of change. They'd always steal the Sparkless water bottle, and they sell it for the little $400 or $500 in it. They never got the big money, thank God.
Another question? Oh, I did see your hand first, so. Thank you all. This question's for Sheena. I just wanted to hear your perspective on sitting in your shoes with this male-dominated industry that is hip-hop. And, just seeing the pictures of the female hip-hop artists in the exhibit is dope. And what it was like for you. What was your take on their experience being in this world,
Well, for me, I always just felt like it was a privilege to be around, period, just for me. Just to sort of just be a fly on the wall was always cool. And to see other women either as flies on the wall or as, folks who we flies were observing was just always Christmas morning, I always made a point of making sure that the writers that we had working for us were, we had women in the mix. There was an episode, one of my former writers at N.W.A, Aaliyah King, who's an author and doing workshops now, she tells the story on one of her blogs about how she wrote a very short record review for our music editor, and he gave it to me, and I gave it back like, what is this? Basically just because it's short doesn't mean you can just give me crap. You know what I mean? Like more substance than style, and not the other way around. And she tells a story about how Black Swat gave the edit back to her, and she just broke down. Oh my God, she just fell apart, and he basically reeled her back in, and she did it. She did it perfectly, and I made sure to let him know to make sure that I saw her byline going forward in every magazine. I'm all about supporting the sisterhood, period. Black, white, or candy stripe. All you gotta be as a woman and be good at what you do. At the end of the day, you don't want to think we're all we have, but sometimes we are, So I was always thrilled to put a woman on the cover, so all you gotta be is dope. Hey, you have a record coming out, that's something we want to discuss, versus all the other records coming out, and bang the dash. And we made it go. And I feel like I always knew that I was doing my best work because I was serving my audience, I wasn't interested in being anybody's friend, I wasn't interested in getting up in anybody's face and being anybody's parties. I wanted to serve my audience. And as long as the folks who I was working with were on that same page, we were good to go. And luckily we always had a good mix of men and women across all races, etc. And we always, pleased our audience. So it was always just fun for me. But the idea of working with women who I knew I was elevating in some way was always really, really nice. That's what I came from. When you come from support, you want to make sure you're passing that on, So, yeah, that was always great.
Any other questions?
It's really kind of a follow-up to the last question, but, I think it's one thing to come up with some support and be able to give something back. And then there are women who are much like the men who are just on their own, right? So what was it like for women trying to compete with the men to be artists? Because there were 2 women in the pictures and lots of men. That picture is mostly men. What was it like, and maybe Lonzo, you know this more, when a woman came up to you versus Dr. Dre and was like, I want to make it? What was the difference between Medusa and Dre?
Well, I think, Medusa comes with a very particular sort of skills, a particular sort of ethic, a particular sort of mindset. You're not going to tell Medusa no. She's going to get done what she wants to get done. And that's sort of the case, I think, with your average woman. You're not really going to tell a woman who's determined that she can't do what she wants to do. So, and that's in, hip-hop or flipping burgers. That just is what it is. So, I think that hip-hop was just filled with dynamic, fantastic women, not just artists, but managers, stylists, A&R people, label folk, publicists. The industry has always been, teeming with amazing women. So, most of these folks, were they, again, male or female, you're dealing with powerful women in the business that were helping to move you forward. So at the end of the day, what it just felt like, if you are living your life on purpose and doing what you would do for free, you love it so much. You're getting a check, that's just a bonus, I knew that I was doing what I was setting out to do, which was to push people forward and serve an audience. And I knew that we were doing that based on the feedback we were getting, not just from the letters, but from, from artists, from the label folk, from everybody. So for me, it was just, we knew that we were doing our job, not just as journalists, but as folk pushing a culture forward that we wanted to move forward. So that's how it felt for me.
Our final question right here.
This is probably the last question.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for what you're sharing. This question is from a fan's perspective. As you guys have seen so much, going back to the 90s, I wanted to ask, from when Ice Cube came out after he left N.W.A. to when Snoop came out with Doggy Style after The Chronic, Tupac when he signed to Death Row, and Nas with the buzz for Illmatic. Out of those 4, I remember reading the articles and I followed it. On your side, who would you say out of those 4 had truly the biggest buzz before they popped? Nas before he dropped Illmatic, Cube after he left N.W.A. and came out with America's Most Wanted, Pac when he signed with Death Row, his first album with Death Row, and Snoop with Doggy Style. Out of those 4, who had the biggest buzz on the streets from your perspective? Thank you.
You know what? That's going to be a hard call because Tupac came out of jail, so everybody was looking for him. Snoop had just did the undercover cop situation. I forgot what it's called. I can't think of it anyway. Deep cover. So that was anticipation, and it's hard to beat going to jail. It's hard to beat going to jail. And when he came out, I think it was so much controversy before he went to jail. When he came out, okay, that just made it like, oh my God, what's happening? And then his work ethic was so dynamic. It was like, okay, I got to do this all today. So that's me. I'm gonna have to go with Tupac. So Cube. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's a hard call.
I think from the radio side, it was Snoop. Okay, we played Snoop a lot more than we played the others. Now, from the street side, that's a whole different thing. But from the radio side, definitely Snoop.
I get the last question.
Go ahead.
I get the last. I want to give you enough time to be able to. Lonzo's book is here. Lonzo is here to sign your books. I want to make sure that you all have enough time to go and be able to do that, and also come up, talk to Sheena and Greg. So I want to ask the last question here. So this exhibition is based on on moments. Photography captures moments. You all have lived long, fruitful, productive, amazing, influential lives in hip-hop, in LA hip-hop. What's maybe one of your most favorite moments in LA hip-hop? Hip-hop in LA hip-hop, however you wanted to take that one.
All right, well, I have one. When Rap Pages did a benefit concert featuring Brand Nubian and Das Effects at the Catch One. And I was waiting for Brand Nubian to show up for a sound check. And I was waiting. My dear friend Cedra Walton, who had a promotions company at the time, still one of the best promoters out there, G Money, Gary Stevens, we were basically waiting for them to show up for their sound check. So we're waiting, half an hour, 45 minutes. Where the F are they, right? Doors swing open, and in walks Run DMC. So I'm like, what are y'all doing here? And Run said, Lior sent us. He said we were performing. And Lior Cohen was the head of Def Jam, and he managed all these artists, and he was who we booked Grand Nubian for, Brian Nubian with. He's like, well, you know, Lior said we're performing. So we were like, here you go. So myself and my best friend and a lucky third got to stand there for a surprise 45-minute performance from Run DMC. And we danced, we laughed, we cried, we lay on the floor. It was fantastic. So that definitely was one of mine. You know, it's one thing to expect that you're getting a Run DMC show. Oh, and then of course we did the show that night, and we got to just blow the minds of everybody who came. I still remember the looks on the faces when Jay Smoove told them, announced Run DMC. You thought I fell on the floor. You should have seen that whole club full of hip-hop heads. You know, many of whom had never seen Run DMC live before. And then you see them for a surprise after seeing Das Effects and Brand Nubian. I mean, it was insane. So that was mine.
You know, I think mine have to be a little bit more detailed situation from the story that Jeff told earlier about the day in the West. That day, everybody was there. And if anybody knows about the history of West Coast hip-hop, it was two guys that were the Nitro and Glycerin that blew the West Coast up, with me and Roger Clayton, rest in peace. And me and Roger started off we had our last job at the record distributor. That's where we started all the stuff at. We were selling records together and we smoking weed. My son's here. I shouldn't say that, but anyway. We was blazing every day going to work, and man, we got to do a dance at Alpine Village. Yeah, let's do that. And we started doing it. And when the Day in the West came about, me and Roger had been fighting. That was part of what blew up West Coast hip hop. We constantly one-upped each other, constantly. If he did a dance, I did a dance for the after party. And the Day of the West came, and me and Roger always feuding. Anybody knows at any given moment, this could turn into a shouting match or a bunch of FUs or whatever the case may be. But this day, we both was on chill mode. We took pictures with various people that day. The whole day was a beautiful day. We waited for a bunch of people that came late. Well, Roger and I came time to take the picture. We walked up to the top of the bleachers, and we just sit there and wait on somebody to start taking pictures. And somebody said, don't know who it was, where's Roger and Lonzo at? If it wasn't for them two, would none of us be here? And somebody said, there they are right there. Y'all need to be down in the front. So me and Roger looked at, let's go. So we started walking down front, and as we started walking down, everybody on the bleachers stood up and gave us a standing ovation. And I'm like, wow, they really appreciate it. Now, like I told you guys backstage, even with these shirts, I'm a sensitive guy. And I'm sitting there, I'm fighting tears. I'm like, they finally recognized us, okay? And me and Roger were walking down, and somebody said, hurry up, take the picture before they start fighting. And that's a true story. And to sit there and take center stage amongst everybody on West Coast hip hop and be recognized by your peers, because neither one of us, I'm not platinum. I'm not known as a DJ. I'm not known as a record producer, but I consider myself an entrepreneur with ADHD. I had a little bit of money, and I did a lot of everything. I was a club owner. I was a concert promoter. I brought Curtis Blow here first. I brought Run DMC here first. I was the first guy to own a nightclub. I was a DJ. I had a residency in my own club at 22 and didn't know what a residency was. Hooked up with Greg Mack, brought New Edition. We opened up for New Edition when KDAY did their show at Fremont High School. And we did so much. I had my own record label. I was a record distributor. I wrote songs. I performed on stage with some of the biggest and the best, but nobody really knows Lonzo. I'm like that hidden figure behind some of everything. Master P's first song, Ice Cream Man, I own it. He stole Turn Off the Lights, and I took the publishing. So it's only business. And when most people don't know the roles that I played, and when somebody finally does appreciate that and recognize, you did a whole lot. Yeah, I did. But because I'm not Dre, I'm not Cube, I'm not one of the guys out there, but because of now the history of what we did back then through the documentaries, I started to get a little recognition. It's one of those times I feel a lot. I feel like I almost waited for this I'm an overnight success after 40 years. Okay. I took 40 years to be overnight success. So all that is combined, and all that right there is a part of what makes me feel good, makes me do what I do.
By the way, the Day in the West picture that he mentions, he says there's more
MCs. Oh yeah. It was an old football stadium, and the bleachers were full. I mean, from end to end. We had to stuff guys in. Dre was the last guy to come there that day to be in the picture. We had to slide him in, and it was to the maximum. And actually, it was much bigger than that right there. It was outside the whole 9 yards.
Great.
That's a tough question. I mean, if you name any rapper from the 80s and most of the 90s, I have a story. I could give you a story. I can tell you from the radio perspective that the people that gave me the most memorable moment while I was at KDAY it wasn't a rapper, it was Barry White. Barry White and I had a great relationship, and one of the most memorable moments I ever had was being able to be backstage with him during a sound check and playing cards and laughing and telling crazy jokes with Isaac Hayes. So it was me, Barry White, and Isaac Hayes. That's how old I am, people. But one thing Barry pointed out to me on one of his sessions, he was a lot like Alonzo. He would talk, and
excuse me.
and I'm sitting here like a student, even when you talk. I steal a lot of your comedy. But he was telling me that when I was doing what I was doing with Alonzo at Dudo's, and we eventually scooted over to Skateland, and we did both because we couldn't handle the crowd. He said, because Barry, a lot of you may not know it, was a gang member. He was an ex-gang member. And he said, I like what you're doing there, because we were doing live broadcast on KDAY. We'd have groups performing live. We called it Friday Night Live. He said, I like it, but, you keep staying in a blood area. And I was like, okay. So I didn't want gangs to think, because I had, a very good positive relationship with the gangs because we were their station of choice. And so we decided that we were going to start doing World on Wheels. And that way we reached the Crips. We decided we were going to do Sherman Square in Reseda, another skating rink, because of the Hispanic gangs that would go there. We did the Casa Camino Real downtown, which was kind of neutral territory, but that was kind of where the freestyle thing jumped off. And then we would do 321 Club in Santa Monica, which is where all the white people would go, but that were scared to go to any of the other places. So we brought hip hop over to Santa Monica. But one of the things out of all of that really stood out to me is I'd asked Mr. Magic to come hang out with me one night. He happened to be in town when we were doing a Friday Night Live. He didn't quite understand how the gang thing worked out here. And so I happened to take him to Skateland that night. I think we had, somebody from that area performing, but he got up on stage in a blood area and he said, "What's going on, cuz?" And when he said that, which for those of you that don't know, that's not a good thing. You don't, when he said that, the whole place just stopped and it got quiet. And I remember that we had to literally carry him up out of there to get him up out of there because we had 1,500 red shirt wearing people coming after him. And that was a memorable moment, even more so than Long Beach. But Mr. Magic did, he was calling me while he was leaving. And he's like, "What did I do? What did I say?" I'm like, "Dude, we'll talk about it later. We just had to get you out of there real quick." So I guess the moral to the story, and I learned it too the hard way, is that you have to understand in Los Angeles, from a radio perspective, exactly what areas you're in. I wasn't afraid to go in the indie area. I went into Nickerson Gardens and, I was always over there giving away stuff. So everybody was happy. But I would say that's probably the most memorable moment.
Thank you.
From a radio side.
From a radio side and a community side. California Love of Hip Hop History. Please join me in thanking Greg Mack, Sheena Lester, and Lonzo Williams. Thank you all for coming. Lonzo's selling his book over here on the side. Sheena and Greg will be up here. Please go out and enjoy the exhibition, and thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you.